Welcome into episode 2 of the Kentucky Roundball Roundup. You like that name, Zack? Do you like that?
I love the name. I love the logo more.
Oh man, I'm telling you. So 2 weeks ago we got this thing rolling, and we had a Jack and Zack
Power Hour
roundball attack. We were trying to play on the stupid Jack Zack nickname. Realized that's very corny, very cheesy, not going to work. So we just decided to scrap it entirely, and we just went with a fresh, clean Kentucky Roundball Roundup. And I think I like the way it sounds. And we got logo help from KSR Zone's Brent Wayne Scott. He did a fantastic job with that. So go look at that.
Big shout out to Brent for that.
Admire it while you're enjoying this podcast because he worked very hard on it, and we appreciate his time and his effort on that. So this week, last week I was absent. I kind of disappeared from the world for 5-6 days or so out west. I was in Yellowstone with my wife, kind of before basketball season. It was kind of just a refresh before basketball season starts later this month. So sorry about the absence last week, but we are back, and holy moly, there's a lot of news to talk about.
Who's we, Jack?
Oh, Zack Geoghegan. I didn't even get to introduce you. Zack, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad to have you back, and I'm glad that we actually have – like you said, we have endless news to talk about today. So yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to just get ready and rolling. Awesome. Let's take a second. We kind of already talked about it off camera, but let's give like a 2-minute spiel for your Wyoming, Montana mountain boy excursion that you went on.
My wife and I decided, okay, basketball season starts late November. She has some rotation. She's still in school. She's in grad school right now, graduating. She'll be officially done next year. It's, midway through the year. But her rotations start in January. So we were trying to think, okay, well, next year is going to be super busy for us, starting, Thanksgiving on with college basketball. We were like, you know what, let's just take a quick vacation. We can fit a week in, and let's just, with all the stuff going on and how busy and hectic the news cycle is. And we were just like, you know what, let's just disappear for a little while, disconnect our phones and just have a good time. So we, in 2 weeks, we planned we said 2 weeks from right now, we're going to fly out west. We flew into Gardner, Montana, drove south to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, stayed there for 3 nights, and then drove back up to Gardner, Montana again, and stayed there for another 2. And we got to see bison and wolves and bears and just, red fox. I mean, it was just awesome. The weather was awesome. We got to, go hike cool places and go see beautiful scenery and just, enjoy life a little bit because, it's always just negative and, negativity and pessimism. And, every time you look in the news or social media, it's always just negativity and pessimism. So we were like, screw it. Let's just get away from all that stuff and just enjoy life a little bit. So that's what we did. And we definitely enjoyed life. So yeah, it was a great time.
If you ever moved out there, you'd already have a perfect name for yourself. You just call yourself the Lumberjack.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with the Pilgrim pun there, but
I didn't even think of that one.
Even though that's not really like Western-y, it's still a name that you can.
But you had fun. Ultimately, you had fun. You disconnected for a little bit, and now you're back.
We are back, and we have plenty to talk about with the Roundball Roundup. Kentucky basketball season starts later this month, and we actually got an official schedule. The schedule's out. I mean, we know exactly when and where we are playing for the first time. So, do you have that pulled up by chance on you? I'll get us rolling. You get the actual
pull it up
game by game thing scheduled. So Kentucky is starting this season November 25th. It'll be on a Wednesday at Rupp Arena against Morehead State. Zack, I'm interested to know what you think about that season opener.
The Morehead State. If you just look at those 3 teams in general, the Richmond game is the one that I'm most interested in, obviously.
They were a tournament team last year.
Do what?
They were going to be a tournament team.
Yeah. So that one will be a really fun game. The Morehead State and Detroit game, honestly, the Morehead game would probably be ranked number 3 on the viewability list, just in terms of things I want to actually watch. But Morehead State will be fun, in person or in-state rivalry. So that'll be cool. Or rivalry. I guess it's not really a rivalry. How often have we played Morehead State? Is that like that's not really
not often,
ever.
not very often.
Yeah. So I'm just excited that we finally got this. I think it's interesting that they're going game 2 days, game 2 days, game 2 days. Like they're kind of stacking things together there early, which I guess is kind of going to be necessary to squeeze everything in together.
Things in as early and as often as we can in a time of uncertainty with, everything going on. I mean, I appreciate the efforts on the scheduler's part and the school's part just to get everything, scheduled and worked out so quickly just because of how, I mean, they just announced yesterday that the Champions Classic was going to take place in Indianapolis. I mean, and we're like 3 weeks away from the season right now. So I appreciate how flexible they've been with this and trying to just navigate through how hard it all is and just said, yeah, we get everything's difficult. We know that this is going to be a season unlike any we've seen ever. Let's just do what we can and put a schedule out. And they did. And I really appreciate that the first 3 games of the season, we usually have these early season events, the non-conference events at Rupp Arena. And in past years, it's been Toledo, East Tennessee Tech, and no-name schools, Georgetown College as the local flavor, whatever the case is. It's always been just, okay, we needed 3 games or 4 games or 5 games or whatever to check boxes on the schedule to say, hey, we played a game, instead of actually noteworthy headline-y type games. Morehead, you have actual local flavor that's going to give you at least Division I, competition. That's at least something that people can look forward to. Detroit Mercy, obviously the Brad Calipari connection, they're going to give you, some entertainment value there. And I think, Richmond, that's a school that they were going to make the NCAA tournament this past year. They were on a lot of the preseason top 25 lists going into this year as well. So, when you factor in just everything combined with this, I think it's a hell of a way to start the season. I'm going to be totally honest. I like it a lot.
And it doesn't, from what I can tell, it doesn't seem like there was any big surprises, any big add-ons. It looks like all the 9 non-conference games they added in are ones that we already knew about, from what I can tell. So there wasn't any big, so I guess, no, let me see. It doesn't look like it. No, I guess we knew about all these games, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, UCLA, Louisville. So that's, those 4 games are like Kansas, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, UCLA, Louisville. That's a that's a pretty interesting 5-game stretch there. You'll see. You'll learn a lot about the team early on. I know we've heard some stuff over the last few days about Cal kind of coming out and saying what he thinks of the team so far and where everyone's at. So who knows how those games will go if they're looking rusty and whatnot, as we usually are. So you'll definitely learn a lot. That Kansas game will be interesting, December 1st. I'm not sure. I know Kansas is supposed to be a little bit more veteran loaded than we are. Is that correct?
Yeah, but they're not as top-heavy talent-wise as years before. I think they're going to be good, but not great. I think this is a good year to get them, actually. I think this is a year that definitely favors Kentucky just from a pure talent standpoint. So I definitely, personally, I think we caught Kansas in a good year, especially with, all the NCAA stuff going on the side. They're a distracted bunch with their 5 level 1 violations, not knowing what's hanging ahead of them. So they're a distracted bunch, and I would argue not as talented as usual. So I think Kentucky got them on a good year. But the question that I have for you, Zach, is how is it that Kentucky has to play their Champions Classic matchup on a neutral site in Indianapolis against Kansas, but Duke gets to host Michigan State at their home court? How does that work?
Is there any more information about that, or
it got confirmed today?
They didn't explain why at all.
I didn't personally see an explanation for it, but
I'm trying to think maybe location works easier, but I guess that probably doesn't make sense either.
They're in Michigan, East Lansing.
Yeah.
In comparison with, wouldn't it be in between both would be Indianapolis? Why would you not just have all 4 teams playing in Indianapolis?
Maybe
if they're willing to do a neutral site.
check.
I don't know. I think it's garbage. You shouldn't get a free home game out of the deal.
Well, so then what are they going to do next year? Is then Duke going to go to Michigan State and we're going to play in Indianapolis again? Or
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so this is what would have been the ideal scenario.
is if we went to Lawrence like originally.
Duke gets this, Duke gets this one. That's fine, and I was okay with the campus idea. But if we were going to do it, Kentucky is the away team this year, so Kentucky would have headed to Lawrence. Fantastic venue, would have gotten them in a year with minimal fan attendance, so would have worked out in Kentucky's favor quite a bit. And then next year, you flip them. We play Duke next year. They play at home this year. Obviously, we would get the home game this year since we're playing on the road at Kansas. Boom. Why would we not? I mean, think about how massive it would be for the home schedule to get a Duke game. I mean, when's the last time we got Duke at Rupp Arena? Like,
I honestly don't think that's ever happened.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, it would be a historical event, and I kind of assumed when they announced the Indianapolis idea that it would, that Duke might not play in Indianapolis, but they would play at some neutral site too, because one's in a neutral site. Why not make both of them? But to have one on a college campus and the other being on a neutral site, it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, that seems like maybe Duke wrote a check or something. I don't know if they can do that or not, but I'm sure they might have tried.
The power of a Coach K phone call.
Yeah, exactly. I will say I'm looking. I'm concerned about this 3-day makeup window. I feel like that might be a little too low of a number. Only 3 days to make up. I mean, how many games are there? 27 total. Mm-hmm. So let's figure. I mean, some of these games are so tight together. Like, let's say Kentucky gets a positive test right before the Detroit Mercy game, just to say it's really early. Then, if they're doing the same sort of protocols that the SEC has instilled, which is like 10 days you have to sit out for football they're doing. So I would imagine it'll be something close like that in men's basketball. So, if you miss a bunch.
14. I think it's 14 in college basketball. Which
14 is
I don't see how that's going to stick if college football is different. Yeah, I have a feeling there have been some talks about that potentially changing. So,
and they may just cancel, like if the game against Notre Dame needs to get canceled because of COVID, they might just cancel that one altogether. SEC games, they'll probably end up making up everything. But if they have an outbreak in one of the teams, and you've got a couple players that have to sit out, let's say 2 of Kentucky's best players need to sit out for 10 days or 14 days, which ends up being 3 games. Or maybe they just have to cancel those 3 games altogether. Making it just having a 3-day window to make up 3 games doesn't seem like enough.
Didn't the NCAA come out and say that there are no NCAA tournament, that they have minimized the tournament guidelines this year in terms of how many games need to be played, how many games won? It's going to be, I thought it was you must play at least 50% of your games to be qualified. But in terms of some of the other stuff, it's not, it's not as complicated as past years where, certain number of games or whatever. So I don't know the specifics on that, but I do know that they're going to at least be more flexible in terms of if there does need to be a cancellation or whatever, right. Kind of what they did with the bowl season, where they said there's no minimum bowl, number of wins to be eligible for a bowl this year, just because it's just so things are just so far up in the air. So I see the concern, but I mean, it's happened in football. So that's why I'm just drawing the precedent too. I'm not saying it'll happen or not, but in football, they only play once a week, and you can squeeze in extra games towards the end of the season. If you just need an extra 2 weeks at the end of the season. But I guess that's going to be harder to find an extra 2 weeks at the end of this basketball season if they want to do everything in March, like it seems like they want to do. They want to try and get back on their calendar to make sure that they can maximize or at least, the profits that they're used to. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how they deal with all that, because it'll happen eventually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how the NFL they kind of built in a free. I think the Super Bowl paid for 2 full weeks of like hotel rooms and stuff like that at the Super Bowl location in Tampa, I believe. Mm-hmm. Just because they knew that and I think there's still talk about potentially adding a week 18 or something to the NFL season, just because there's so many moving parts. right now is when you need to be flexible. I don't think that one little tiny window of grace period that the NCAA and SEC have put forth, I think that could be a moving target if need be. If they need to extend it to a week and push the SEC tournament back a week, whatever, I think right now they need to know unprecedented times call for unprecedented schedules and deadlines and stuff like that. So I personally, I think everything is kind of up in the air right now, and they're just going to kind of play it game by game, week by week, month by month at this point.
Yeah. And that's probably the best bet. I mean, I would assume that their projections right now, like that March 11th, they want to start, March 10th, they want to start the SEC tournament. That's probably their earliest day. I would imagine that they've got all those planned in and maybe go into April and even May if they need to, especially for the NCAA tournament. But let's kind of, or do you got anything else you want to add to that? Or you want to kind of shift here? What about, what do you think about Big Blue Madness going, kind of virtual this year, even more so than it has been, because they've done it on SEC Network. The last couple years, it's always been on there, and they used to do it at Memorial. Maybe early 2000s. They
did it. The last time they did it was 2004. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they've done this before, I guess, but it'll sure be different.
Oh, definitely, and I'm very excited that knowing what's going on right now and knowing that preseason, the exhibition games are canceled, no big scrimmages allowed or anything like that.
Probably no blue-white game, right? That's not going to happen.
Right. Well, and that's kind of what I'm saying. This is going to be the first opportunity for us to see this group, and I'm glad that opening tip November 25th isn't the first time that we get to see these kids. Even though the scrimmage that they do is probably not going to be the most.
It'll be typical Big Blue Madness competition.
But I almost think it's going to be a little bit more competitive because they know they don't have the blue-white scrimmage. I think they're going to try to combine both events and give you the entertainment and pizzazz of normal Big Blue Madness, get the player introductions, probably get a little short John Calipari speech, whatever.
Definitely get a speech.
And then make sure that the scrimmage isn't them throwing full court alley-oops of, just being stupid,
So do you think they're going to set up some sort of stage and kind of have everyone come out and do their own dances and everything? Sure. I mean, if they're going to tell about, you think they'll still do everything like that?
For sure. And
I think set it up just like a normal, regular Big Blue Madness.
If I remember correctly, previous years that the SEC Network, haven't they done – I mean, obviously the majority being Kentucky's Big Blue Madness, but don't they usually kind of go to each different event throughout college basketball if there's multiple?
They do for – I don't know about other SEC schools, but I know Memphis is always on TV and they'll always try and find Kansas is on there too.
Yeah, and I think
we know about
that's usually when I think it's usually when it's on ESPN. When it's ESPN, they do all of them. So maybe the SEC Network is strictly just Kentucky's. But I remember growing up, it was always, if I wasn't able to go to Big Blue Madness, it was like, oh yeah, it's televised, and then you turn it on that night, and they show 5 minutes of Kentucky's, and then they switch. Oh well, let's go check out what Kansas is doing.
Right.
Oh, let's go to Duke. Let's do this.
It used to be at midnight. Didn't it? Forever ago. Because that was when I was real young, because it was at midnight, and I never stayed up for that. Yeah, that's how young I was. So it's definitely changed.
But yeah, I'm glad that we're getting this opportunity to see these kids, learn their personalities. That's the biggest complaint every single year with this rotating roster, that fans don't get the opportunity to see these kids up close and personal. They don't get the chance to learn their names, learn their games, learn their styles, because they're in and out in 8 months. So
yeah, we got social media now. No excuse for that.
Yeah, I personally think, there's YouTube. You get full game highlights. When we on my Sources Say podcast, I interview half these kids every year anyway. We try to do a good job of making sure who these kids are before they get on campus, but still, that's still a growing complaint every single year that they don't get to know these kids well enough. And I appreciate that UK is going out of their way to say, yeah, I understand these are tough times. I understand that you're not going to get the same level of interaction that you usually would at a Big Blue Madness camp out or whatever, but they're still going out of their way to make sure that these events are still being put forth, and that you do get to see these kids before the opening tip.
So when we do finally get this Big Blue Madness, it's sounding like the 3 players to watch are going to be obviously Terrence Clark and BJ Boston, and then Isaiah Jackson. So what else are you kind of hearing, or what's going on? Where are you at with some of these players?
Well, going in this summer, all of the talk was Terrence Clark and BJ Boston, Terrence Clark, just because when you have 2 consensus top 10 recruits recruited by everybody in the country, especially at 6'7", both elite scorers, when you get those 2 headlining guys, obviously that's going to be the talk. So I've been trying with on my other show, and if I've been on a radio appearance or writing on KSR or whatever, I've obviously given the props to the 2 headliners. I mean, they deserve it. They're going to be UK's 2 best players, but everybody knows that already. So I've been trying to dig a little bit more and figure out, okay, who else needs to be highlighted? Who else is going to be making an impact? And obviously Isaiah Jackson was the name that very quickly. I didn't hear his name immediately. It was the Devin Askews of the world, and maybe like a Lance Ware or something like that. You heard some bright things about that, and then it went from almost zero buzz to every time you talk to somebody within the program, or every time you talk to somebody that has been watching or has parents or other family members of players that you talk to, every single time they were bringing up, oh man, but you got to watch Isaiah Jackson. That's a kid. That's a pogo stick in a human body. That's a kid that he's going to go up and block shots. His length is just ridiculous. He can, his putback dunks, his alley-oops. I mean, he does everything on the floor that you look for out of an athletic 6'10" forward. So that was a name that quickly progressed as one to watch. Heard a lot of great things about Davion Mintz. And I know on KSR today, they were kind of talking about the back and forth between Devin Askew and Davion Mintz. But I think Kentucky's very confident in the fact that and that's why they brought in Davion Mintz 100%. They, talking to people within the program, they said, we have Devin Askew. We know what he's going to be. We want him to be our guy by the time March rolls around. But you want a Davion Mintz just in case Devin Askew struggles or has some bad turnovers to start the year, whatever the case is. They wanted a guy that could be the stable force on the roster at point guard, and that's exactly what Davion Mintz is. And they're competing hard, but yeah, I think that's going to pay off in a massive way for Kentucky to have at their disposal. Heard a lot of good things about Lance Ware. I think he's going to be a strong, tenacious rebounder. I think he's I kind of compare him to like Reed Travis a little bit, but not just in size. He's very thin. Obviously, doesn't have the brute strength that Reed Travis had, but just the workhorse down low that is going to he's going to go fight for the tough rebounds. He's going to have the tough putbacks. He's going to finish some tough baskets down low, and it's there's always value in that. But yeah, those are kind of the biggest names. And I also heard Jacob Toppin but it was like the day before his eligibility was made official. I talked to a parent, and he was like, I've been I have some film. I've been watching practices, and I'm like, I just don't see why Jacob Toppin needs to sit out a year. I mean, yeah, he's a little bit behind from everybody else, but he's not a kid that you look out there and go, oh, he needs a redshirt year. He has to sit out a year. He's a guy that, what we were talking about, say a player on the team gets COVID, say an injury happens, say whatever the case is, having him as your probably 11th man on the roster is just nuts. I mean, to have a guy that was a high-level contributor at a D1 school like Rhode Island, he put up big numbers against Alabama. Some of the high major D1 games that he played in last year, he put up 10+ points. So it's not like you're asking Isaac DiGregorio, a walk-on, who's no longer with the program, or a Riley Welch to come in and contribute. You have an 11th man on the roster that's going to come in and give you something. And just, I mean, there's just so much value in that. I don't know if they're going to do the platoon system, or, I don't know about any of that type of stuff, but you have 11 warm bodies on the roster that are going to contribute from day one. And I mean, that in itself is just wildly and just incredibly valuable for the program.
From what I saw, Kyle Tucker put something out in The Athletic earlier. I think it was either today or last night, talking about. I think it was earlier
this morning. Yeah,
a lot of cool stuff in there that he talked about. The thing that I drew the most or the thing that stuck out to me the most was when he was talking about Cal and the NBA and how he was kind of, stuck inside and pretty much just watched NBA games all summer, and how he's kind of incorporating a little bit more NBA sets into his offense and practice. And as you probably know, I love that idea, mainly because if we're going to go this deep and have these, these versatile guys, like if we have a 6'7" Terrence Clark who can play point guard, or a 6'10" Isaiah Jackson who can apparently shoot threes, which we will see about that.
Don't buy that.
If he can do, he doesn't even have to do that. If he can be a good passer, if Calipari can use Bam, or like an Isaiah Jackson or Olivier Sarr the way Bam Adebayo is being used right now in Miami,
right?
And kind of just accelerate the process, because Bam obviously wasn't as good as he is now, but Bam could have done some of the small passing things a little bit more than he did at UK. So if Cal's going to start doing more of that stuff, I would love to see, because Olivier Sarr, from what we heard or what we've seen, is not a bad passer by any means. So, you put him at the high post and have all these guys like Terrence Clark and BJ Boston cutting around. That is what really entices me. If we can see more 5-out offense, like if Olivier Sarr can come out and shoot threes, or Isaiah Jackson can come out and shoot threes, stuff like that. And they were talking about short rolls. So, just having these guys sit there and pick and pop, and if they can pass especially too, that's just going to make a world of difference. And that's really what I'm very much looking forward to now. Is Cal's really, I feel like he's taken a while to really incorporate NBA stuff into his offense. And now after watching it be so wildly successful through his own players, I think he kind of opened up and was like, you know what, I should be doing this.
Well, we've heard I believe it was 2 off seasons ago. I talked to somebody within the program that said, this is the year we're going to really get back to that dribble drive. We're going to get back to, because the last several years, Kentucky's offense just kind of hit a standstill. It was just kind of just not that free flowing go type that that he kind of hypes up that dribble drive to be.
Don't think they had enough shooters. They've just not had enough shooters.
Well, and that's obviously a significant
the game's
issue.
just changed, and we just need to open the floor more is really just part of it.
Yeah, and so we've heard that in the past, but I think this year in particular, talking to recruits, talking to the parents of recruits, and where they are wanting to go to school, like a guy like Kennedy Chandler, who committed to Tennessee, talking to those guys, they weren't all that interested in Kentucky's offense and the way things were running until they went to the 3-guard lineup and things kind of sped up a little bit with Emmanuel Quickly, Ashton Hagans, and Tyrese Maxey. It kind of took a little bit of an adjustment before they said, oh, okay, that's an offense that we could envision. And he ended up going to Tennessee. It doesn't really matter. But I'm just saying, talking to recruits and talking to the family members of recruits, they're noticing how these systems are being run. They're noticing, okay, am I going to be able to thrive in this slow, molasses offense, where they're not getting shots up, that the pace is slow. They're not, am I going to be able to show off what I can do in this offense? And I think that was a genuine question. And when Calipari saw what that 3-guard lineup could do, and how fast things changed, and how much the offense just kind of, developed, and that team completely changed when he made the jump to that lineup. So I think when he saw that work in the NBA bubble this offseason, he kind of had to look at himself in the mirror and go, this is the way things are rolling. My team worked last year when I kind of did an NBA looking team where you just put the best players out on the floor, not worry about, point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward. It's more of the Brad Stevens guards, big men, or just ball handlers and forwards, or, whatever the case is. When Calipari saw this summer that that's the way that the NBA is moving forward, his team looks better whenever it's kind of a free-flowing type deal, and knowing what he has on this roster this year, how much depth they have, how much speed, size, length, athleticism, all that stuff, it was something that he had to look at himself in the mirror and go, yep, I think this is where I'm going. I'm pretty certain this is where this team is headed, and I'm glad that he has done that, and that they're already that this wasn't a mid-season transition, that this is something that he's already implemented. It's going and that's what we're going to see this year, guaranteed.
Well, the dribble drive obviously has always been his thing. Going back, DeJuan Wagner, Derrick Rose, John Wall, that's always been his thing. That's what's worked for him. And then in the last 5 or so years, the NBA has kind of changed how we're playing the game, and the college basketball has slowly picked up after it. But, it's kind of what you were saying, like Cal looked at himself and was like the last 5 years or so, part of it is not getting these superstar quote unquote players. But like you said, the offenses haven't been as spectacular as they could be. And it took him to go away from, trying to have a guy just pound the rim and switch to like a 3-guard lineup and stuff like that. And finally figure out that, just getting one guy that's 6'4" and is faster than everyone to run to the rim you're just not going to win that way anymore.
Right.
If you're going to do that, you got to start him with a bunch of shooters, and he hasn't done that. So what now they're going to start, obviously, he's had all these UK players and the NBA players, and one of the big drawbacks, or I guess not even drawbacks, but one of the criticisms against Cal is that the players don't get maximized at UK before they go to the NBA.
Right.
And I think part of that is true because they need to work in the offense that he wants to employ, as opposed to letting them show every single set of their talent. But I think what he saw this summer was that maybe if he actually does try and work more NBA stuff into his offenses, he's seen that it works. Maybe, Tyler Hero was just here a year ago. So who's to say he couldn't have done some of the things that he was doing at Kentucky? And I think that Cal's going to try and figure out if he can unlock that sort of stuff to see if, in Kyle Tucker's thing, he was talking about how Terrence Clark is attacking the rim and probably isn't going to shoot that many threes, or shouldn't. Terrence Clark should shoot as many threes as he can, in my opinion. That's all that does, is just open things up. And that's what happens. That's what made the Miami Heat so good, was you had Tyler Hero shooting every shot he could. Obviously, Terrence Clark probably isn't good of a shooter, but similar sort of concept. You have to have that constant threat who's always got a guy on him. And then if you have Olivier Sarr at the top of the key, who's got another defender right on top of him because Olivier Sarr is trying to make a backdoor pass, these are the type of things that Cal hasn't discovered, I guess, in the last, or hasn't really employed the last few years. And I think now he's going to try and actually do it because he's seen it work.
Yeah. And when you have a guy like Olivier Sarr, when you have length, athleticism, and a guy like Isaiah Jackson, where you can kind of rely on them to get those offensive boards and take more risks, and kind of have that Terrence, we know that if you miss this three, it's not possession over, run back on defense, even if you miss. There's a chance that A, you either follow your shot, or B, one of our, even BJ Boston, a 6'7" guard. I mean, there's not a single guy on the roster that's smaller than 6'3". So knowing what you have, I mean, it kind of creates that added flexibility of, not saying be more reckless, but still, if you want to take more risks and take more chances and potentially be that fast, get shots up as fast as you can, type those thrilling fast, like 96 Pitino type offenses where you're just go, go, go. Those are the entertaining things that we're kind of sort of seeing in the NBA now. That, I mean, this is definitely something that we're going to be seeing this year, with this roster and what Calipari's been pushing in practice. So, definitely exciting times.
Yeah, and if you want to argue that, this would be the year to try some of that stuff, just because, like you're saying, there's the NCAA tournament requirements aren't going to be as severe as they normally are. We're probably going to have missed games and stuff. The top seeds, I feel like at the end of the season might not necessarily be the best teams. They could just have been the teams that, kind of looked at with scheduling and stuff like that. So I feel like this could be a year where seeding and stuff like that might not matter as much, and you're free to try and experiment with more stuff like that. So that's my hope, is we'll see just a little bit more NBA initiation.
Yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense. I don't think that part made sense, but whatever.
I got you.
Anything else men's basketball you want to talk about?
I mean, big recruiting week. I mean, Kentucky got 3. I think the last time we were on the show, we didn't even get around to
any of them.
We didn't. Well, I think Sky Clark had been committed,
right?
Because we recorded that Friday, and then it was the day after Sky committed, but we didn't even get around to talking about it. So, and we don't need to drone on about it, but just acknowledging the fact that Calipari went Olivier Sarr, Jacob Toppin Wednesday night, getting both of them getting eligible. Thursday night, Sky Clark committing to Kentucky for the class of 2022. Very possible that he moves up to 2021. That's still up in the air, but a big addition, 5-star, top 15 level talent nonetheless. Just a couple days later, Bryce Hopkins announces his commitment to Kentucky, former Louisville commitment. Obviously, big headlines there, and just kind of how that happened, how long it kind of took for him to, kind of change his mind, decommit from Louisville. UK emerges an early favorite, kind of took a couple extra weeks than many people anticipated, but still ends up at the school we all expected. And then this past weekend, I believe it was Halloween Saturday, that Damian Collins announces his commitment to Kentucky, chooses Kentucky over Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and Kansas. Just 3 back-to-back huge commitments for the program. And then before that was the waivers with Olivier Sarr and Jacob Toppin. So just massive week for just new additions with Olivier Sarr and Jacob Toppin, and I guess official additions for them. But I mean, the dice are hot right now. I mean, Calipari has some recruiting mojo right now. They got some steam, they got some momentum, and I believe the early signing period begins next week. So we're going to get those guys locked up and signed on for the future. Calipari will be able to talk about them, and we'll get press releases about their official additions and all that. But usually it's a domino effect, snowball effect. Whenever one commitment happens, usually it's kind of a snowball. All right, okay, yeah, I see Kentucky in the headlines. They're on the bottom ticker, Sports Center. It usually turns into significant momentum, and we've already seen that. And maybe they can turn it into some other momentum with guys like Hunter Salas, and you just never know with Calipari right now. I mean, he just definitely has it all put together, and recruiting momentum is certainly there.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon either.
Right.
So let's kind of move on here. Women's basketball. We have plenty of news to talk about from there real quick. I've actually got a couple things written down here. I might just start rattling them off if you've got anything you want to interject.
Rapid fire. Go for it.
So their schedule, unlike the men's team, we know absolutely nothing about. We do know we know a couple things that I've figured out. There's no UK UL game. Matthew Mitchell announced that, or him and Jeff Walls, the Louisville coach, announced that last week. That's not going to happen. It's Corona stuff. It's coming back next year, though, so that'll be nice. That will be a bad game to lose, though, because Louisville's going to be a top 10 team. So having that matchup would have been really nice, again, especially since it was a really good game last year. They're going to be playing in the Big 12 SEC Challenge as well. They're playing at Kansas State, which has already been set for December 3rd. They're also going to be playing Samford in the non-conference on December 13th. The only reason I found that out is because Samford actually posted that to their website. So I have that. Yeah, UK hasn't even announced that one yet. So right now we know that they'll play Kansas State December 3rd and Samford December 13th. No UL game. They'll probably do, I think the women's SEC schedule is going to be very similar to the men's thing. I think they're doing, 16 or 18 men's games? They're doing 2.
Yes. Yep.
18 men's, so it's 16 women's games. They have like the 3-day makeup game period as well that I'm sure is going to be the same sort of deal. I think their season, though, or their SEC season starts a day after the men's. So it's all kind of lined up in the same thing. But let's see. What else do we got here? The transfers that we were hyping up last 2 weeks, Jazmine, Massengill, and Robyn Benton. Matthew Mitchell said will probably not play. It doesn't sound like they're going to get their waivers. For what reason? I still can't figure it out.
Did he confirm that they are actively looking for them, though?
He didn't. Okay, so him and UK have been very, very picky about their word. They've been very choosy about their words. He said that he doesn't expect them to play. If we find out any more information, we'll let you know. So from what I understand, what that tells me is they still are
looking.
They're still hoping, like the waiver whatever it's called may still be active, but they do not by any means expect that to happen. And at this point, their season's still going to start the 25th or 26th. So I guess you could throw a player in like that, but that would be kind of rude by the SEC to wait that long, I feel like, but I would take them personally.
Yeah.
But so without them, we've had to try and figure out who was going to fill those voids. And apparently the number one pick has been freshman or first-year player Nyah Leveretter from she's from Georgia. I might get that wrong, but she's 6'3". She is like she's skinny, long. She's going to be the player that can open up the floor for the women's team in the same way that the men's team is going to try and go with, because the men's team and women's team are actually going to be a lot similar in their play styles this year, because they'll be incredibly versatile. They have height everywhere, like across the board. They've got Terrence Clark and BJ Boston having 6'7" wings is pretty much the equivalent of having Ryan Howard and Treasure Hunt at 6'2" wings. So those they're going to create a bunch of weird lineups. Matthew Mitchell said he's going to try and do some weird stuff, maybe try and do less 5-out stuff like he has normally done, and try and roll with more center, like more big lineups. He can potentially go with like three forwards if he wants to, 3 centers, or a center and 2 forwards if he wants to, and then throw out 2 guards who are over 6 feet tall. So on the flip side, he can do some. What he talked about was playing Dreana Edwards, who's a 6'2". She was the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year at Utah before she came here, and then had an ACL injury. But she apparently is a really good passer. She can shoot at 6'2". So she's a player that Matthew Mitchell said could play at the 3. And then if you play her at the 3, you could do weird stuff, play Ryan Howard at the 4 even, or at the 2. So they're going to have lineup versatility that's just as crazy as the men's team. And Matthew Mitchell said that he's going to try and incorporate some of that weird stuff as well. Speaking of him, he is doing better after his brain surgery. I don't know did you hear the full story of what happened to him?
I know of the injury / situation, but not the full context of the story.
So after the tournament got canceled back in March, he and his family went on a trip to Mexico, and apparently while they were out hiking, they were hiking or something, and this is what he said. They were hiking and he tripped, landed on his head, got a concussion while they were down there, was like kind of holed up for a day or two, but ultimately felt fine. And then in June or July, he was starting to get really bad migraines, and they took him to the hospital eventually because it got so bad, and they figured out that he had a crack in his skull and he was bleeding, pretty enough to the point where they immediately put him into surgery and patched that up. So his I guess that was a week ago, 8 days ago, that was his first public appearance in March or something like that. So it was cool to see him doing back. He says he's finally running practices and feeling a little bit better back. He said he should be back to 100% by the time the season starts. So all good news there all around for the most part on the team, except for that Jazmine, Massengill, and Robyn Benton news. But other than that, they're going to start out as a top 10 team as well, just like the men's team. So good news all around from both sides.
I'm going to wait and see on the transfers. I just don't envision a scenario. I just don't see it. I don't know how the NCAA won't, by the time the season starts, say, or even like during the season, or like.
Well, and that's the thing, because with Joey Gatewood, that took until the week after.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's obviously not the same situation, because it's not like we played Tennessee and Auburn the first week,
right?
But there's a precedent there for them to do that. So it'll be. I think it's still open. I think the case is open and they're still looking at it. But
if you're the head coach, you don't want to put out there, we're very hopeful, we think that it's going to still happen, and then have it not come to fruition. You would rather be like, we'll see, kind of not sure right now. I doubt it, but.
And they've been playing very coy about it. So they're probably still hoping, but they are,
Think about how the Olivier Sarr and Jacob Toppins announcement came about. They kind of said over and over again, we're hoping. We think that we've done enough. We think that his case is good. We think that their cases are good. But we'll know whenever you guys do, or you guys know whenever we do. And then it was just a random, like, Wednesday or Thursday night, just out of the blue, boom, both of them back to back. And the season, the landscape of the college basketball season was completely changed with 2 tweets. So
It really was.
We just never know with the NCAA or how things are being announced or how long things take or any of that stuff. So I personally, they can play it coy. They can, they can do whatever they want. I am personally going to continue to have optimism because there's just no reason not to.
Do you think that if it got denied, they would have just already come out and said that too?
Right. And that's my biggest thing. If they're willing to come out and say, we don't know if they're going to be able to play, we doubt it at this point, but we'll let you know if we hear anything.
Well, because even the Olivia Owens situation, who was the Maryland transfer, the only thing that's different there is Big Ten to SEC as opposed to SEC to SEC. But her situation was whenever they were describing how they were dealing with the transfer issues for the other two, they always lumped Olivia Owens in together. So they were all like, UK was framing it that they were all under the same sort of circumstance or situation. So yes, hope should still be held out, but I'm going to go into the season expecting that they don't play. But if they do, it wouldn't be that much of a shock, and it generally would change the landscape of women's college basketball from the fact that they would jump from a top 10 to a top 5 team without a doubt.
I would argue like top 3, top 2. I mean, they're going to be really.
It's like why would, and it comes back to why the issue of why would they not? Like what would be the main reason why?
And the SEC to SEC transfer rule is now out of the window right now. So
yeah,
there's not even that for them to go, well, I don't know about, we still can't confirm that yet. There's no legal reason for them to not be eligible at this point. So
we still have we got a little under 3 weeks, so there's still plenty of time.
Yeah,
but I will go in expecting that they don't play. That's what I'll just say that. I think that's pretty much. Oh, I will say, kind of going back to this is kind of just like a wash of a year in terms of eligibility. So we've already had a lot of media players have been asking seniors if they might come back for that 5th year, since they can kind of do that now. Mm-hmm. And Kiki McKinney, who's probably going to be the second or third best player on the team this year, already was kind of like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I might come back for a 5th year, which would just change. That changes. That would change. It's one of those things that changes everything, and it goes back to the men's team too. If players like that, probably less likely that'll happen for them as opposed to the women's team. But the women's team could probably stock up 2 or 3 5th-year seniors, which would be amazing for the following year. So that's something that's going to have to be kept an eye on as well.
Yeah, I mean
that's far.
The last time we did the show, we talked about how this year is kind of we hope it could be one of those Elite 8 Final 4 level years, but next year is the one that we're talking legitimate Final 4 championship level. Like, all right, let's roll. Let's roll the balls out there. Let's do this thing. You add that new dynamic to it. You add, even just 1 or 2 surprise. I mean, just 1 surprise. I mean, that would just be wow.
With this rule, it essentially could make this year's team could be the exact same version as next year's team.
Mm-hmm. Be identical plus
with the 2 transfers
plus growth and development from this year
and the extra year of production. So that's very scary to think about for the rest of the college basketball world. But I guess we also got to think about other teams will get the benefit of that doubt as well. So we'll see how it all shapes up. That's probably still a long way away, and we'll see if that actually happens.
Yep.
You want to do a little, let's see, what is our time? I think we're at about 50 minutes. So you want to
we'll run through quick NBA stuff.
Yeah. So here, let me kind of just run through what we're looking at right now. So news is supposed to drop sometime today, potentially, regarding the official season. I know the Players Association kind of tentatively agreed to it last night. So let me kind of just run over what we've got here. So they're going to most likely start the season December 22nd, as opposed to Martin Luther King Day, which is, I already forget, January
18th.
January 18th. So they're going to do the 22nd thing because there's a reported $500 million to $1 billion that they would lose just from those Christmas Day games and all that, all the TV revenue that they would get from that. So it kind of came to the point where it was like, look, if you don't do this, we're going to have to take even more money out of your escrow or which they're already going to do, which is apparently they're going to take like 18% of the player's escrow over 3 years, which doesn't sound like that much, I guess. But for like LeBron James, 18% of 40 million is like, it's like $8 million. That's a lot of money, I guess.
Yeah.
Not in the grand scheme of things, but so they had to do that for all that type of stuff. What that means is the draft is still going to happen on the 18th. Probably what's going to happen is free agency will begin shortly after. John Hollinger of The Athletic said that he thinks it'll happen on the 20th or the 21st. And then training camp starts on December 1st. And just like that, bing, bang, boom, we're back to the season. So the plan or the expectation is that whenever a formal agreement is signed within like today or something like that, that maybe like by Monday, they can start doing trades.
Yeah.
So, we're 12 days away from the draft, probably about 3 or 4 days from business opening back up to trade season. And then a couple of weeks after that, it's back. I mean, this is going to be an insane turnaround. I'm very interested to see how they pull this all off.
We are 46 days away from the NBA season.
Is that the official number? 46 days?
46
That's
days
crazy.
away from the NBA season.
It ended like
October
6
11th.
days ago.
It ended October 11th,
Man.
and we are now 46 days away. I mean, okay, I'm a selfish basketball-loving individual. I'm going to take it. I look at it in my perspective, and I go, November 25th is the start of college basketball, and we're going to get NBA basketball all the way through the summer, including the Olympics, which that'll be in July. So we're going to get November.
That's the main reason why is they want to do this start is they have that Olympics thing too. They want to worry about, or that's not the main reason, but part of it.
Yeah, but November through July, we're going to have we're going to have some level of competitive basketball. And that is just my mind can't even wrap around the idea of we just spent all summer dissecting and discussing and talking about how much we enjoyed that season and how there was just how grateful we were to get the sport back. And I mean, I remember the first exhibition, the preseason of the bubble games that we saw. I remember watching. It was that Clippers Magic game, the very first one where they toss a ball for the first time. It was like an emotional moment where you're like, wow, we're getting real life sports back. And like, when the season kind of ended, it was like, oh man, that like build up, that emotional, wow, how much we were looking forward to it. It's gone. And then boom, we're getting it 46 days later. I mean, we're literally, you laid out that timeline perfectly. We're going to have trades potentially as early as next week. 2 weeks from now, we're going to get the NBA draft. So there's going to be a ton of talk about that. Just a couple of days after that, we're going to get free agency. One of my favorite times of the year. It's like Christmas. Well, it's going to be Christmas because it literally is Christmas.
Yeah.
Training camp starts December 1st, and then 22 days later, December 22nd, we're getting the NBA season. I mean, there's no off season. I mean, there's never an off season, but there is physically not an off season this year. It's just wow.
And that's how I'm interested to see how it all kind of plays out. The 72, they knocked off 10 games. They're going to go to 72 games. They're probably going to do like a play-in tournament. They're doing no All-Star weekend, no All-Star break or anything like that. So I'm interested to see how some of those players that played late, like the Lakers and the Heat, or even the teams that got to the Western Conference final or the conference finals, how their bodies are going to respond to return or that sort of a turnaround. Especially like LeBron James. Do we realistically see LeBron playing 60 of the 72 games this year? I personally do not, unless there's a lot of some sort of financial incentives that goes into it. But I would see players like that taking days off. They're not going to do back-to-backs as nearly as much, so that'll be all right. But this sort of a turnaround, I mean, normally they get what, like a 5-month off season?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if you're an NBA champion, you usually get about 3 months.
July to October. So
yeah, and that's if you win it all. So now you're kind of bumping that up about a month and a half. So we'll see how physically everybody responds. It'll probably be a lot of stuff where you see low minutes and stuff like that for players at the beginning, but eventually they'll hit their stride, and you're going to have teams like the Cavs who are going to be like, let's go, like we're ready. We're going to play 72 games right now.
I think
played
that
a
is
year.
the biggest. That I think that is the biggest incentive for them outside of the Olympics, outside of just the financial aspect of losing time and games by starting later. Is the fact that they haven't played since March. I mean, there are teams like in like high dollar individuals like Steph Curry and Kyrie and KD, those type of guys. I mean, not counting the injuries and all that stuff, but you have star power that, I mean, they haven't played since March. They're waiting for, for their own reasons. They have to get back at some point and start getting real game.
Think about Cat
for them. Yeah. Karl Anthony Towns, Trae Young. I mean, there's so many high level guys that have been sitting there patiently waiting for their return. And I see the incentive for them to get things back going early, minute restrictions to start with, kind of ramp up into high level competitive basketball there, a month or so into the season, but you got to start somewhere. And I understand that as a quick off season. I understand that guys like LeBron and even Bam, Tyler Hero, those the people that played later into the off season or into the season and into the playoffs, they're at more of a disadvantage, but you can justify that with A, more money in their pockets, and B, by telling them they don't have to play. You could play 20 minutes tonight, 25 minutes, 30. You can kind of ramp things up as the season goes on. So I think it's a net win for basketball fans, and I think it's going to end up being a net win for the NBA players who, after a financially questionable and uncertain year, it's going to be good to get some level of stability back.
Mm-hmm. And the NBA has already kind of been lax to an extent on or load management, or whatever term you want to use. They kind of have already just been okay with it, but they'll threaten with fines and stuff like that. Right. If you're sitting like an ESPN game, they'll say no, but otherwise, I think you're going to see a lot more of that and just a little bit more leniency from the NBA, even more so. And if LeBron wants to sit out a couple games in a row, I think the NBA is not going to say anything about it unless he's sitting out ESPN games and games that they need to make that money back, because those primetime games are going to be even more important than they were before. So you won't be seeing him sitting out any of those games, but the ones on League Pass that I'll be watching at 12:30 at night when they're playing the Sacramento Kings. Yeah, I don't think LeBron will be in that one, but
all right.
I will. So one more thing here. Eric Bledsoe, I think, is going to get traded. And I say I think, but
I think the writing's on the wall for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of reports out that and obviously if you just watched Eric Bledsoe play in the last 3 years in the playoffs, I don't know why the Milwaukee Bucks would want to keep him. They made the wrong decision last offseason by picking him over Malcolm Brogdon. I think they're going to try and rectify that. I keep saying I think, but from what I've read, they're going to try and rectify that and get him out of there. And
yeah,
they're a team that apparently is going to try and go after a Drew Holiday, who's been now made available, from reports say, who will be a hot pick. I would love to see him go to like Denver or somewhere if they can do it for cheap next to Jamal Murray. That'd be cool. But yeah, Eric Bledsoe, I don't know what a suitor for him would even look like. I don't know what team would be good for him. But it sounds like he's going to find his way out, and the Bucks are going to try desperately to pair a third player next to Middleton and Giannis. And Giannis is going to take whatever the Bucks are going to give him, some giant offer, and he's probably going to take it. But that does not mean he won't get traded at one point.
Yeah.
So yeah, poor Eric Bledsoe. He's just not been good.
Darn.
Really just all it is. It's kind of a shame because he's not bad during the regular season. It's just something, I don't know.
There's a fit for him out there. I mean,
there's definitely a team. Milwaukee probably wasn't best, especially with how, Budenholzer ran his offense and just kind of stuck with whatever the hell he wanted, even though it clearly wasn't working. And part of that probably isn't on Bledsoe as much as we make it out to be.
I'd almost like him on a, maybe as a part of that Drew Holiday trade to kind of take back over that. I don't think he needs to be the star on a team, but I guess more of an expanded role that kind of fits his play style and fits his leadership. I think almost if you
As a
replace
facilitator is where he should probably try and shift his arc a little bit more.
Yeah, I think there is a role somewhere for, and I was just spitballing, live here with us with that Pelicans, maybe Drew Holiday, Eric, some type of facilitation with that. But
I could see the Knicks trying to make something for him too.
Yeah, yeah.
Knicks he plays.
There's definitely a role.
He's still a good defender. He's still an All-NBA defender.
Yeah, I think he's still a very good player. He just
craps out when they need him the most, and that's kind of what you pay these players for. So
you put him next alongside star shooters or other star talent. There is a fit for him somewhere where I think he could be. I just don't know if his ceiling with the Bucks is over. He's reached his ceiling. That's the most that he'll be able to give that franchise moving forward as we kind of reach that tail, the backside of his career. So
what is he, 30 now?
Yeah.
30, so, might be 30 or 31.
Yeah, so we'll keep your eye on him. He will likely get moved, and I'm rooting for him to find a new home that fits his play style, his leadership, his defensive talents.
Yeah, I also think a team like the Clippers would be someone to keep an eye on, just for trying to stabilize what's going to be left of that team when they figure everything out after they.
I like that fit a lot, actually. I do.
Kind
of give that team a stable force at point guard too.
Yeah. So it's clear that Bledsoe can't be the third or probably even the fourth. He probably has to be the fourth or fifth best player on a contending team if they want to maximize their abilities. So, or
a second or third best on a rebuilding team looking for a true veteran that
he could absolutely go to the Knicks and be their second or third best player, and that would probably be a good fit for them.
Yeah. Yeah,
or even the Magic or something like that. So,
yeah, there's something out there for him.
I think you got anything else you want to add? I think we're about good.
This was
a lot of stuff
perfect. It felt good to get our podcast juices flowing once again after disappearing from the world for a week. So I appreciated this conversation, and I look forward to continuing to have these
every Friday. Right, we're going to try and make it a thing.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much set on this Friday schedule. So
we don't have that third wheel to knock us off our schedule anymore. So we can actually do what we want it to do.
She who must not be named.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we will see you guys back here next Friday, and give us some more feedback. We got a bunch of good feedback first time around with this show. Numbers looked fantastic. So we really appreciate everybody that tuned in for our debut episode. And we look forward to building those numbers and continuing this on to the future.
Later, folks.
Adios.